Hey guys, welcome to another one of our reviews. I'm the Worm, and this is the Proton. Today we're going to be doing a gripper that we received from Nige. He's on Facebook, eBay, all kinds of things. He's also got a site as well, which I always forget because
it's not live at the minute though. Yeah,
so that's I haven't been on it because it's not there. That's probably why I don't remember it. But yeah, Nige on our Facebook, or go to his actual Facebook page, which will be linked down there anyway. But yeah, a dripper today.
Indeed, another dripper from Nige, or VapourSaints from Nige, basically. We'll get straight into it. What we are doing today is the Trident V2 clone from VapourSaints. Obviously, we're familiar with the Trident. This is the version 2. So we're going to show you what the differences are and all that kind of hoo-ha. A couple of details about it though. From Nige, it's going to cost you $14.99 delivered in the UK next day. Banging. Unless you're in the top part of like Ireland, UK, I imagine it's going to be longer than that. But other than that, we've had no one say that it's from UK and it ain't been next day. So Nige does a smashing service on that. And yeah, that is what it is. $14.99 for something that cost me a tenner on Fasteg and I waited 4 years for. So what we're going to do is go straight down. We're going to do a little re-wick for you, and we're going to basically just show you the differences between this and the version 1. If you're familiar with the version 2 real thing, then you can know what's happening with this already. But we're going to show you the differences between this and the version 1. Do a little quick re-wick for you. Come back up to us. Normal stuff. Right guys, quick little close up. We've got a nice little baggy dingle going on here. Just a courtesy guys, nothing important, but it's just nice to have them. And inside is the Trident V2 clone. We'll go into the deck I suppose first of all, because I think that's going to be simpler. Dan just screws it onto a mod because it has no fingernails to grip anything. So take it off at the base. Very simple stuff, pretty similar to the one before. The version 1, clone and genuine. You've got your 3 post arrangement, slots in the posts and so on and so forth. 1 O-ring this time guys. Those of you who had the version 1 clone in particular will know it was incredibly tight, and most people removed an O-ring, but this one is just tight enough, but not overly tight. Post system, fairly simple stuff. All you've got is just your flatheads, so you can use pretty much anything you like to undo them, and then you expose. There we go, you expose a gap in the screw. You can take them all the way off and drop the wire in, or you can place it down and then secure it in afterwards. If you weren't listening in the first review, it's basically exactly the same stuff. So that's the base. I mean, you've got a serial number on the bottom there. Mine's 0131, so I don't think they're generic. They may be running in order, I'm not sure. And then you've got your copper centre contact, positive contact. So those are all good things. Barring that, pretty much the same. Drip weld looks about the same. The arrangement's all the same. So lovely stuff. It still rolls. Getting into the top section, this is where all the changes have happened. Firstly, obviously you've got your band around there and you've got Trident written on it, which is quite cool. It looks pretty good. So yeah, that's obviously a big change from there. Your sort of top still sort of nutted effect, but your base is no longer down here. That's no longer got that kind of nutted effect, which I prefer because it seems to fit better with mods. The main difference is obviously how you control your airflow control. You undo this. Let's take it all off, I suppose. We'll undo this. You've actually got a reduced chamber in comparison to the V1, obviously, because the chamber would have just been up before. So the chamber is reduced, not by loads, but it is reduced, because bear in mind the top cap would have slotted inside before, whereas this time it's fixed. And then around the edges you've got all of your air holes. Okay, there's quite a few there, a little bit juicy goosey guys, excuse that, but you've got a very, very small tight air hole there, and then you roll it around. That'll be a dual air hole there, as you can just see the desk through there. And then you've got a monumental air hole there, and then some more setup options around here. It's all good stuff. So basically the idea now is, so don't do that. Say for example, say for example you wanted to take your biggest air hole, which I seems to run on here. You literally stop that on there. You then would take your top cap, screw it in place, and that's you secure. So if you wanted to adjust, it's a lot easier. You can just smaller. It's just how it is. Even if you want to go into the smallest air hole, which is that one down here, single coil setup, you just do that. So it makes it a lot easier than having to manually shift around that bloody top cap from the version 1. Do want to quickly say though, if we take this all the way off, let me just find the biggest air hole again, which is there. It's there. it's there. The biggest air hole is actually fractionally bigger than the hole in the band that goes around it, so you're going to be restricted by the size of the hole in the band. So it actually looks more like it's going to be the same size as the dual hole, which is a shame. You'd think they'd have made that fractionally bigger to match that bigger air hole that's there. So yeah, that's basically the biggest air hole you're going to get unless you decide to drill this out. Top cap feels lovely and heavy, all stainless steel, and the screw threads are wicked stuff. So you can't really argue with that. 510 drip tip, unlike the version 1, hadn't had any problems with the 510 drip tips. If anything, it's actually very, very fractionally loose this time as opposed to tight. But before, I mean, I've got about 30 drip tips, and I had 3 that would fit in the version 1. In this one, they all fit. It's just some of them are a little bit snugger than others. Some of them are actually quite loose, so not necessarily great, but definitely an improvement on that one. Gonna do a quick rewick, guys. Same kind of rewick as the version 1, I guess. Just grabbing some materials. Yeah, same kind of rewick as the version 1. Just going to do a single core because that's my preference in this device. So there you go. So what we're going to do, very quickly take out the positive and one of the negative connections. It doesn't matter which one. I think we'll go for this side just purely because that's where I prefer to be. I like to rewick the coils down here facing me when I'm rewicking, so you've got that advantage having 2 negatives if you're running a single coil. So guys, another important, I think, change in this one is these screws in the version 1 were plated. In this, they're stainless steel screws, so that's another thumbs up for that as well, because obviously they've improved it. The materials, I know some guys have problems with their negative screws breaking, and hopefully won't be an issue with this one. What we're going to do, guys, 2mm drill bit, 0.37 count for on this one, and what we're going to do is just a very quick micro. We're probably still going to be sub-ohm because that's just how we roll, but not as crazy sub-ohm necessarily as in the version 1 build. 5, 6. We've done 9. We'll stick with 9. Why not? What I then tend to do, grab me pliers, pull it tight there, pull it tight here. I don't tweezer it necessarily in most builds, and I don't flame it at this point. I'm just going to use a device to do all that fixing coil stuff. Then I just simply, I'm going to cook this up, I always do, slot the wires in the device, oh hello, like so, 1, 2, so they're in there. Then I will grab the screw for either of them. They're both the same, but I tend to do the positive one first, purely because if you do the outside one, you're going to struggle more with the inside one, I think, because you've then got 2 screws in your way, whereas this way, it'll be, oh hello, it'll be the first one that you do. Okay, it's just starting to bite there, so once we've got it to bite a wee bit, we can then grab the other one, hold the wire in there, push the coil in, and then use this one to secure the negative. Oh, hello, popping out again. Okay guys, 10 wraps of 0.37, it'll just give you that a little bit more width on your coil, so I'm going to have to pull the coil apart a bit to secure it and then re-crimp. This is a problem with using the device this way, I suppose, guys, is it can be a little bit of a pain in the bum. As you can see, the positive now, I've pushed it over, so I'll have to unscrew that bad boy and then bring her back into its true position and then screw it down. So there and there-ish. No, I'm not happy with that. It's always time for a bigger screwdriver. Sometimes these threads can be a bit of a pain to line up, people, just so you're aware. Obviously, as you can see, most of the time they're fine, but it's always the way when you're on video, things go wrong. But it's not too bad. It's manageable. There we go. So now I've got that secure. What I do is lift the coil off slightly, fairly simple stuff. Bring your a spare bit of wire that's at the back up the top. I need to just grab some right in front of me. clippers, and I'll cut the wires at the back. Fairly easy stuff. Pull your drill bit out of the device, chuck it on a mod. Just make sure them wires are secure at the back, you don't want them making contact. Yes, chuck it on a mod, screw it down. 9 wraps of 0.37, I reckon we're probably about no, definitely not 1. We're probably around about 0.7 ohms. So we'll give her a little test fire. You can see it's hot spotting like a maniac. So what we want to do is just grab your pliers or tweezers, either way. This is quite a thick core, so it'll take it, and then give it a little push. And you can see we're pretty much there straight away. It's the advantage of doing it this way, guys. It's very, very nice and simple. Have a go again. And I think that will about be the ticket. Lovely stuff. Just have to blow it off quickly. Because obviously you don't want to be putting cotton through a hot coil because you'll just burn it. A simple procedure, guys, used to it by now. Especially for this kind of coil, I tend to wrap around the 2mm drill bit predominantly. So if you do the same kind of coil every time, you get used to how much cotton you're going to need and what you're going to have to do to it to get it to work right. So just tear bits off until you get to your desired thickness, width, however you want to word it. And obviously remember, you don't want to be too tight in there. You want it to be tightish, but
I think we go with
girth. Worm's a fan of girth. So I hear anyway. So cotton in there, sort of free moving but a little bit of resistance. That's basically all you want. And then what I'd probably do is cut her around here, get rid of that, cut this one about, I don't know, somewhere around about there, get rid of that, grab me little dingle dangle pliers, and I'll bring this around the back here. This is always easier if you prime it first, guys, just bear that in mind. I think what we'll do is we'll go along the front like that. In fact, I'm going to prime it. We've got some Mrs. Lord's Druid, lovely. Just going to prime it with that because I like the fact it's green, to be honest with you, no other reason other than that. So get it all nice and wet, bish bash bosh, and then lay your cotton, one in there, one in there. Do I want a little cloud in this? I think, looking on reflection, I probably should have a little cloud in this. As far as cotton clouds go, guys, it's literally just a little bit of cotton wool, goes under the coil and it will swell with the juice. That's absorbed the rest of the juice in there. It's just a little bit more cotton in contact with your coil, and then have a little test fire, I suppose. There you go. You got rid of the excess liquid, doing the job just fine. And then obviously top cap on, and then we'd have drip tip in, back up to us for a nice little vape, guys.
Hi guys, that was the up close of the Trident V2, obviously again from Nige off our Facebook and that. Yeah, it's little tweaks are going on there with the actual different way of adjusting the actual airflow and that, which is, in our opinion, better. Definitely a slightly different look to the original as well, because obviously you got that same matted.
Yeah, kind of satin, or yeah, it's definitely a satin ring.
Yeah, satin ring effect going on there with obviously the Trident on there, so you can twist and turn it whichever way you need for whatever air setup you need. In
dingle. Right, obviously I'm going to glass over a few of the particulars that we did go through. Stainless steel, lovely stuff. So that's always good. I love the stainless steel. You've got the copper contacts in there. You've got the kind of screw system that we like from the version 1. You've got rid of the stupid extra O-rings, and the airflow control system completely different, which again in our opinion is better. You've got a lot of different options with this, guys, in terms of air hole, single, dual, all that kind of stuff, and the more options you can get into one device, in my opinion anyway, I'm guessing one's going to agree with me totally on this, is better, as long as them options are working. That's the kind of catch with that, I suppose. They've got rid of the silicone. You've got the kind of nut effect almost on the top. It seems like there's more flat edges on this, so it makes for a less round impact. A less all-around impact. It actually seems more round than the version 1 did, and they've got rid of it entirely at the bottom, which I'm really happy about, because that was always a little eyesore for me. I'd like it to be gone at the top as well, but this is definitely preferable to the version 1. With the version 1, you had that kind of, you had your outer cap with your 2 big air holes, and then you had your inner cap and chamber reduction there. that was always a bit of a pain to adjust. I mean, you had to kind of by eye and then push it down, then maybe manipulate it slightly, especially if you left both O-rings intact. It was a lot more difficult than adjusting pretty much any other airflow control system of that type, and a lot more difficult than doing it this way as well, which is also making it better as it progresses. That's the idea. So yeah, in terms of everything that they've done to this, I can't think of one thing that they've done to this that isn't an improvement. I mean, and also an upside to what they've done with this ring is it's brought that body in slightly, and you've actually reduced the chamber even more. And obviously, smaller chamber, greater flavour. I mean, it's great for it as well, guys, but it's smaller chamber, greater flavour, and that's just how it is.
Plus the fact you can actually lock that the air channel setup you actually want once you've actually got the device ready. It's not if you lock, as long as you lock it up finger tight, it shouldn't undo in your case and pack. We've never had it happen to us yet, but obviously make sure you've got it finger tight, not tight, because you may have trouble undoing it and adjusting it when you're on the go sort of thing. But nice finger tight generally keeps it intact and where you want it basically. We haven't had any trouble with it yet. Small adjustment to the holes on the outside ring. Why didn't they make them the same as the larger hole on the inside? That is our only downside with this one really. Every other improvement they've made has been better for the actual device, but
it is the same with the actual.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that's again. I mean, if all credit to the looks go to Grand Vapors, and so do the flaws in that ring, to be honest with you, because it's a 1-1 clone. So yeah, Grand Vapor sorted your shit out. But I've noticed when you're doing up the air holes, so just finger tight. If you set it off 1/4 mil to the right, it pulls it in just perfect. If you want in that bigger air hole, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, what they could have done to save some of the complication is just add 3 air holes that are the same size as the 1 air hole, 1 here, and 1 here, so 2 opposite each other. And if you want to adjust it, just move it over half a turn and block off half the hole. I mean, and I know you've got your set hole and it is easy to get exactly what you want if your preference is one of them smaller holes, but for me personally, I like it open just constantly. The question is, do I want to open it on 2 coils or 1? But again, that's just me personally and the worm. As far as the AT goes, you've got a kind of barrel kind of looking effect. I think it's looking by eye. Alright, we haven't got calipers to measure it. Looking by eye, 21 mil to the outer barrel, but the base itself is 20 mil. So take that into your calculations when you're doing it, or when you're playing it. If you've got something that's going to go on, if it bothers you, it's not flush. I mean, to be honest with you, this is proper attack of the clones. You've got a clone of the Sentinel, you've got a clone of the Trident. Lovely! Adjustable 510 pin in there as well in the Trident, which is awesome. I mean, pretty much every mod I own will adjust, so it doesn't necessarily, it's not a necessity in the atomizer, but it's nice to have it because not all of your mods will. I mean, if you was running this on something like Pravari or variable voltage, and you just it's not very typical that them centre pins are adjustable. There may be connection issues, especially if you've got a wide berth centre pin in them mods, and this will eradicate that. So it's nice to have it there. That's just how it is. And also another thumbs up for this as well is that you've actually got stainless steel screws in this as opposed to the plated cack that was in the first ones. I mean, again, that's the clone and not the actual thing. We're not comparing it to the actual thing because it's a clone. But in the first one, there were problems with people snapping them screws, which is something that's bound to happen eventually. If you're over tightening it, if you're using thick gauge wires and you're trying to pinch them in. I mean, what you have got to bear in mind, guys, I know that metal's metal and you think it should be quite rigid and all that kind of stuff, but bear in mind that when you're dry burning, for example, you're heating that metal up, okay, and then you're rapidly cooling it, and you're heating it up and then you're rapidly cooling it by applying juice or blowing on it. That has an effect over metal over time and it is going to degrade it, so just bear that in mind. I mean, we love the thicker gauge wires, but don't ever hulk them. I mean, if that's coming from me, you know you should probably take note of it because I hulk everything. Alright, but this is a device that you don't really want to hulk just because you've got a delicate setup there, haven't you? If you're willing to hulk it enough, you will ruin it. I mean, on the upside, as long as it's one of the negatives, you can still run a single coil, but it's just something to bear in mind that it's never going to be a stupidly strong setup because it's not a solid screw. As we pointed out, guys, for those of you who are not a big fan of the drop-in of the coil setup, you haven't got to. We've mentioned this in the Trident 1 review. You can just loosen them screws off, especially if you're using the thinner gauge wires, sort of 28, around that. Just loosen them off and push it through. It's something that Nigel said recently, it's something that we've said back in our Trident review as well. You can make it set up like you would a standard iGo, just by unscrewing them screws, slotting your O in. If some of you are struggling with getting them screws back on once you've got 2 of them in, you may struggle with the 3rd. And as you saw on camera, I do as well. Not as much with this one, but it always happens on camera, so it just seems to be the way it is. I've been on quite a little flap there, haven't I?
It's all good.
You want to go?
No, you pretty much said everything there is to say on that one.
Okay, in which case we'll just dive straight into the 5-point hit list, and then we'll probably come up with a few other bits and bobs we want to talk about on the way. So, do you want to hit first?
Looks compared to the first one, it's a 10. But for me, this one is still a 9, I think. I mean, it's how I like things to be, like, out there but subtle out there, you know. I do like the fact the adjustable airflow actually sits flush with the rest of the body where it's actually touching, and that. I like the little designs on it and everything. But I wouldn't say it's, in my heart, it's not my best looking device, and it just isn't. But I do like it. It is a 9. I just don't think it goes with a lot of mods that I have got. So I don't really use it on everything. It kind of, I find one that it looks nice on, and that's the one it's going to stay on, sort of thing. So yeah, it's about a 9 for me. So
there you go. For me, it looks compared to the version 1, I think they've definitely improved it. Not just in terms of usability and function, but incredibly better, incredible margins and better looks. I think anyway. Looks to me, I'm going to give it a 10. As well, I said, it doesn't go with everything, but it does go with a few things that I own. And let's face it, it's made by Grand Vapour. The Trident 1 looks fairly similar, and it does look good on pretty much anything that's Grand Vapour, including the clone and the clone of the clone and whatever else. So yeah, it does look pretty good on anything much Grand Vapour. I mean, I quite like the look of it on there with that kind of drip to it. I think it looks kind of funky. It's a bit different. I think the fact it's got Trident written on it in cool writing is a bit better than that. The actual. Do you remember the miniature picture of that pissing Trident that you could have? Why would you clone that? All you've done is cost yourself 5p for the print, and no one can bloody see it. But yeah, for me, I like the fact it looks like it does. I like the fact you've got the stainless steel kind of polished looking, and then it goes into the satin finish. The ring, I'm not entirely sure on materials. It may well be Ali. It doesn't feel very heavy, so it may well be aluminium, but it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter. We're just trying to let you know what it is. I mean, if you want a stainless steel ring, then I don't think you're going to get it. I think you've got Ali, but if you want it, it's 15 quid. Live with it. I'm sorry, but that's just my attitude towards that. Picking over materials, it'd be different if it was made. I mean, someone made it of bloody marble or whatever, and brilliant on them. But yeah, it's just it is what it is, guys. We're just letting you know what it is. So it looks to me. Right now, I'm going to give it a 10. I think it still looks very good looking, and it's a dramatic improvement over the first one.
Usability, obviously, with the slopping the coils in, if you find that easier, it's one of the easiest. If you're doing it single, one of the easiest single coils to set up. To be honest, sometimes you do have trouble getting those screws back on, but it's not like you're destroying anything while you're doing it, sort of thing. Once you actually start the threading on, then you can adjust your coil back to where you need to, and off you go again. Other than that, it's dual coiling. It can be a little bit difficult because obviously that positive is on the same screw, so you may struggle with your thicker gauge wires, like we say. But your thinner gauge wires, it's still going to be no more hassle than any other dual coil, basically. So I think usability on this is high for a dual coil, but there is still things that are a little bit getting used to, like the fact that the screws come off when you slide them in. Even if you're keeping them on, you still got 2 wires there, so you still got to wiggle it about and stuff and adjust it, and you're always going to be, until you find how to dual coil every time perfectly first time, which is going to take you a while, even for people that can single coil perfectly every time. I think it's 9 for usability, because it's just a little bit of playing around, especially with the air changer and like spinning your disc around, tightening it up and all that kind of stuff. It's not hard, it's just getting to terms with it and getting used to doing that, and I think that's the only reason it's going to get a 9 for that.
Usability for me, in terms of a dual core build, there's only one dripper that's easier than this in my opinion, and that's the Helios. So that's high marks for the dual core build. I love single coil in this Trident. I even see the version, I just single coil in this gets on with me, and I'm not sure why, because I love the duals as well for cloud chasing, and this is good at it. But single coil for me is what I do in the Trident. It seems to work for me spectacularly, and I don't feel I need any more than that. So you've got the option there. As well said, with the usability, as far as the air hole and stuff, you have got to get sort of used to how it's done, but this is far more in a way easier. All you've got to do is line up the air hole you want and just make sure the ring's open over it, and if you use them on the smaller air holes, it isn't even really that hard because you've got a bit of movement either side. But what I tend to find though is, I'm not someone who's going to wrap a single coil and then use it on a small air hole and then go, oh, I'll open the air hole and then I'll use it to cloud chase, because that coil for me wouldn't work in both of them situations. If I want to really cloud chase it, it's low and that won't work with a tight air hole. So what you tend to do, even off the device, you can line up your hole, slot it down, and then just line it up like you would a normal sort of top cap of an iGo. So that for me is lovely jubbly, like piece of what's it. But usability in general, I think, yeah, getting used to the whole setup, especially if you haven't had the version 1, you've got to play around with it and whatever else. But with that little bit of effort required for usability, you're gaining loads of options, and it's a trade-off that I think is well worth it for everyone. So I'm giving it a 10 for usability. There are devices that are slightly easier to dual, as we mentioned, but with this many options, even the Helios can't match it. So yeah, definitely getting a 10 for usability.
Maintenance, obviously you've got, there's not really much to, if you're taking it all apart, there's nothing really that's going to fall down the sink unless it's the actual screws that you've taken them off to actually give them a good clean up, which I wouldn't do personally, and if I did I'd put the plug in and give them a good soak and take them out before even tempted to remove that plug. So other than the 3 screws, you've got nothing that's going to fall down the drain or anything. The only other thing that I'm thinking about maintenance wise is maybe, not initially, but over, if you're using this as your main dripper, constantly on and off all the time for like 3 or 4 months, if you're over tightening those screws all the time, you may start to be bending that, because obviously it is completely empty in the middle of that screw. It's not a fully stainless screw or anything. It's got a groove cut out of it. It's not going to be as strong as your standard screws, and you may just have to watch out for maybe it's starting to deteriorate. But that's going to be a long-term thing, not an initial thing. And other than that, there's not really much to maintain. O-rings always like the standard. If it snaps, put a new one on. Other than that, it's just cleaning it, and cleaning it is going to be, if you wrench it under a tap, let's be fair, I mean, just make sure those screws are tightened down. So I think short-term maintenance of it, it's a 10. Long-term, depending on how tight you're actually doing your actual wires up on the actual positive and negatives, one of them could snap eventually, but I don't see it happening in this version because they are very well made this time, and I think they will last probably as long as you're going to be using it, to be honest. But if you are one of those people that do like to over tighten, and he does, I can see his one. If out of the 2 of us, if one's going to break, it's going to be his because of him over tightening.
That's highly racist.
It's not highly racist.
What is that about?
So I just think you're saying you just got to be aware of when you tighten them down. Just be careful, but not too careful. You know. So long term, it could drop because it could break, basically.
But then that's the same with every atomizer in one way or another.
Yeah, but this is a little bit more susceptible than other stuff.
Racism. Maintenance for me, you have got a couple more parts of this. It's not just bottom cap and top cap. You've got obviously the top part of the top cap, which is screw threaded. Lovely screw threading on that, by the way, guys. The ring itself, and then you've got the actual top cap chamber, if you like, and then you've got the base or the deck. None of them are going down the plug hole. The only thing that's going down the plug hole is the screws. All right. If you lose one of them, trust me, there are people out there with version 1 Trident sort of broken posts. I'm sure they'll donate you one. Just ask, have a post on the Facebook group. But in terms of maintenance, I mean, if you're gonna, I mean, this is a single coil on cotton, micro. That coil's good for, even with me, and if I was using this as my predominant device, it would last me a good few weeks before I felt the need to change the coil. And even then, it's more of a, oh, I really want to change the coil than whatever else. For me, these micros, everyone says they'll last 2 months. They will, but not if you're me. Purely because I get compelled to change my vape. So I can go from a juice that's like, yeah, that's banging on 0.6. Okay, but this one's better on 1. Okay, so what can I do? Use a different drip? No, I'll change the coil. But that's me. Maintenance, easy. Micro coiling, dry burn it off, blow it off, and then put new cotton in. I'm going to give it a 10 for maintenance. I don't think it's any harder than any other dripper. The extra parts, they don't really play a part, because let's face it, if you've got a dual coil set up, if you don't put them screws on properly in any of them, they're going down the plug hole. They're just a lot harder to replace in this than they would be in something like an iGo or whatever, because typically you get spares with them, and if not, small machine screws aren't hard to find, whereas these are going to be harder to find. So yeah, that is what it is. But maintenance, I'm going to give it a 10. I think it deserves a 10.
Yeah. Flavour and vapour. Amount of vapours out of this is, it's the same as the version 1. Loads. Depending on what obviously build you're putting in there, if you're a dual or single, but even for a single, it's still a 10 compared to single cores. If you're using dual, it's still a 10 compared to duals out there. It's easy to set up, and it just produces vapour all the time. flavour on this. I tend to find you get better vapour off of a single coil off this. I don't know why, but the single coils that I do in it, I just seem to get more flavour from. Maybe because it's just more what I usually vape anyway, because I don't really overly go too much on dual coils that often, and when I do, it's a big hoo-ha, and it takes me half hour, because I have to take half hour just to prepare myself to actually dual coil it anyway, so I don't look forward to dual coiling, so I always run this in single coil, and it's what I prefer in it, because the flavour just seems to be just slightly better on it. I don't know why, it just is. But the flavour on this as a single coil is a 10. Even as a dual coil, it's still a 10 if you're, as long as you're not cloud chasing, because obviously you lose a bit of flavour sometimes when cloud chasing, depending on what sort of resistance you're running and how much cloud you actually want. So, yeah.
Vapour for me, I mean, as well as put that, it's going to depend on your overall wattage or the resistance and the power that you're putting through it. It's going to depend on whether you're using dual or single. It's going to depend on whether you're using a high PG or a high VG juice. It's all contributing factors, guys. But if you're using your normal setups in this device with your normal juice, it does produce more vapour than a lot out there. Okay, vapour on this is going to get a 10 for me. You've seen what I've been blowing. I've not been trying to blow clouds. It's not a stupid low build. So yeah, I'm giving it a 10 just because I'm clouding plenty enough for me. I mean, you're running a dual in that, aren't you? And I'm producing more. But
yes, the aqua, isn't it?
There you go. So yeah, vapour's going to get a 10 for me. Flavour. Flavour's getting a 10 from me. I'm definitely getting a lovely amount of flavour in this. I do want to say, in comparison to like the version 1, the flavour has stepped up a mark, because I mean the version 1 we gave a 10, but in this they've upped the game, because you've got that slightly reduced flavour, slightly reduced chamber. You have got a more intensified flavour coming through. And one thing I've noticed in this, even in comparison to like the Helios, for example, the Helios will give you a much wider draw when both are open, in comparison to this when both are open. And I've noticed the throat hit in this seems to be a little bit less. They've reduced that chamber and not increased the throat hit. Like, I get the same throat hit off a dual as I would off a single, which is awesome sauce. So it's a flavour vapour for me at 10s. I think it's really good. I do.
Yeah, overall, if you want a dual coil plus a single coil that can do everything, kind of dripper, that it doesn't look great on everything. It doesn't. If you've got the right mod that you know is going to look well on, and you're that kind of vapour like I am, you like it to look good when you're vaping, basically. As long as you've got the right kind of mod to put it on, it's a hands down 10. I mean, even when you put it on another mod that doesn't look right on, I mean, yes, it's still performing like a 10, but it looks like a 9. There's something wrong about it, you know, that kind of like, oh, that doesn't look right to me. But the actual device itself is a 10 overall. It does everything that you want it to and more.
You done?
Yeah.
That was nice and quick. For me overall, yeah, it's built well. It looks good, I think. Anyway, I think in hand it looks even better than it did in the pictures. It's just it doesn't go with everything. It performs well, and it's 15 quid delivered. So yeah, this is definitely getting a 10 from me. The only issue really I've found, and it is a minor one, I guess, is on this as opposed to the V1. The V1, you closed up the extra hole and you had a single coil setup. I never got juice appear at the second hole in this. On this one, I do now and again get a bit of juice coming out the hole that's blocked off, so I'm guessing there's a little space around this ring. I mean, it's minimal, and I barely notice it, but now and again I'll put my finger like that on it and I'll feel a little bit of sort of greasiness from the juice. So yeah, that's a little downside, but still it's minor. Yeah, so overall for me it's definitely going to get a 10. I really like this. I'm really happy I've got it. I do use it, so that is what it is. I use it quite a lot. Lovely stuff. Obviously want to say a big thank you to Nigel for providing a lovely little service to sort of the Facebook community as well as the eBay community, but he seems to be particularly involved with the Facebooks. He did say he'd coil this for you if you wanted it coiled, if you wasn't particularly confident in your coiling skills and wanted to give dripping a go. This is a great way for it to be started because it's a fairly easy device to use and you've got a lot of options, and then obviously Nigel will coil it for you to your preference. So that is what it is. VapourSaints and or Nigel's sort of business will be down here, his eBay one and his Facebook one. Yeah, we're not endorsing it. Sorry guys, someone commented on one of our videos the other day saying it sounded like a blatant endorsement for a company. Bear in mind that we bought the product anyway. As I'd say in Canada, fuck you buddy. So yeah, basically that's what it is. No endorsements, but yeah, go and check out Nige. Got great products, great prices, lovely bloke, all that awesome stuff. Yeah, I think we're pretty much done. Thank you for watching, guys. I've been Mr. Proton. This has been The Worm. See you soon.